Hey, what's up, everybody? So I had some training this morning I was just going to do for my members at MixCoach Member, and I thought, shoot, this is good stuff. So maybe some people on YouTube or Facebook would like to see this live. So that's what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about how to mute your way to a good mix or to a better mix. And I just go through a few examples on how to mute things, and we're going to be using the song from the lovely Holly Winter this morning, a song that we did, but it's going to be later in the training. So without much further delay, let's dive in. I'll be taking questions as well as Tassie and some other members who are on the website. If you have some comments, I'll be able to see them. If you have any questions, I would love to hear them. Okay, all right. Let's get to the training. Movies has always been, and I haven't seen it in quite a while, so I don't know if I'm telling on myself, but I used to love the new version of the Thomas Crown Affair. I just loved the way he was so cool. He was committing crimes and stuff like that, but there was one scene in there that just makes me think of mixing every time, and that is the scene where he's about to break in and steal some art, and he is so smooth, Thomas Crown is. He sprays like a mist or something like that, and then he puts on different pairs of glasses, and he looks, and finally one pair of glasses he puts on has some kind of polarization or something like that, and he can see where the lasers are going, where the security is, so he knows where to avoid those lasers and get to the art, and he does, and he steals the art, and all is good. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I think that's probably not a good example. But here is what I wanted to share with you. And when we mix, if we can find those goggles to put on, if we can experiment with different ways to look at a mix or ways to hear a mix, then we'll hear things differently, and we may be able to see where the pitfalls are in your mix, right? So one of those things that I like to do is muting things, and that is comparing things. Now, you've heard me, if you've been a member of MixCoach, or if you've followed any of my teaching, you know that I always say mix and mono and a few things like that. But one of the other things I say is that you need to mute things to make sure that other things are in place. So, like, for example, you've heard me talk about muting the kick and seeing if the bass still can carry the mix, or muting the kick and see if the bass can, or maybe I just said that the opposite way, but you get what I'm saying. Well, there's other ways to do that, and things that I noticed, like I was mixing yesterday, and there's other things that I do that I noticed that I wanted to show you guys. This is kind of like those goggles that you can put on. I also talk about triangulating a mix, and when I flew a lot more, there was a way to navigate places before GPS, and it was like you're this far from this speaker and you're this far from this speaker, so you must be here, and that's the way you listen to different mixes. Well, that's another thing that I wanted to discuss with you today. You kind of have to triangulate your mix, and every time you do something like this, you're actually strengthening your mix, and you're almost guaranteeing that your mix will be compatible on other systems and with other people listening, with things falling apart. Anyway, okay, so I kind of call it micro mixing. Well, every good mix has good submixes also, and ways to do that are kick and bass. There's another couple of examples that I do when I'm mixing, and that is, I've got a couple of them written down here. The kick versus bass, of course, and call it the mute check. You mute the kick and check the bass. So just keep that in mind on these next few examples. So kick and bass, kick and snare and toms. Listen to your kick and snare, and you can solo this or you can mute things. It's kind of effectively the same thing. Solo is a super mute, basically. But if you wanted to listen to the kick and snare versus the toms, anywhere you've got a kick, snare, and then a tom fill, you don't want your toms to lay down when it comes to the kick and snare. And with you putting on these goggles, you can see that maybe your toms are not loud enough. There's a few examples I've heard in the recent months of mix reviews that where toms were a little low or toms were a little hot compared to the kick and snare. Here's another example: drums and bass versus guitar and keys. When I'm mixing along and I've got the drum sounding like I want to, I kind of get tunnel vision of how the drums sound, and I'm not paying attention to all the other important stuff. I'm not in, if we're talking about mixing for the moms, you're not paying attention to the other kids in the background who are just as big of a part of this production as the kick and snare, the lead roles, right? So mute your kick, your snare, your drums, and then listen to the guitars and keys and make sure that what they're doing is adding to the mix. And you may find that there's a rub somewhere in a chord that you might need to take a look at, or maybe there's a lick that you didn't know that was there. You don't see those things unless you put on these mute goggles, okay? So here's another example. Piano versus keys. So when you've got a piano player and you've got a pad in the background or maybe strings or things like that, mute the piano and see how well the keys are holding up. Lead vocal versus background vocals. This is something, and this is one of the things that happens naturally when you mix backwards. When you mix from the least important, you can't say drums are least important, they're very important. But when you mix backwards and you make the last thing the loudest, these things kind of take care of themselves. This is why I teach this. But you always should go back and measure, triangulate, cross-reference how your mix is, how strong it is. Okay, so lead vocal versus background vocals. Okay, and even more than that, background vocals themselves, because some people just think if you can hear both of them that you're good, and in some cases that is true, but in some cases it is not. In some cases, for example, you might have people on 3 different parts singing background vocals, and only 2 of those parts need to be featured because one of those guys is probably singing the melody, and the melody is happening on the lead vocal. So when you listen to those 3, lead vocal and background vocals, you get this. But then when you take this out and you listen to this, you think, okay, this might be a little bit loud, or let's listen to these 2 without the lead vocal and put the lead vocal back into background vocals. Now, I don't want to confuse you about lead vocal and background vocals. Typically in Nashville, when you do an ensemble type of background vocal session, you put all 3 parts in there, a trio, and one of them is singing the melody, which, if you're singing background vocals, you're taking the melody from another person who's singing melody. So you don't want to make sure that's too loud. So just a way to mute things and kind of notice things and whether they're holding up or not. Okay, so let's see. I've got a couple things written down here. I've really been thinking a lot about this. Mix cross bracing. Each time you mute and check the strength of the remaining connections. Every time you mute something and you check the strength of what is still playing, even if you don't do anything about it, you become aware of what's going on. You might find that little lick is in there. I didn't know that fill was in there. I haven't heard it because I've had the vocal on or I've had the drums on or whatever. So it gives you a chance to strengthen up a mix if you just listen and you mute and get things out of the way. Okay. An example I have there's a guy I used to mix for. His name is Michael Radford, and he liked to spend a lot of time on one song. And I remember, it seemed like a long time mixing one song. And when he would come in and listen to the mix, I had done this. I had paid attention to all the subtle stuff that he put in there because he was very meticulous. And there wasn't anything on the track that wasn't important to him. And I remember impressing him one time because I was aware of the things that were going on that were real subtle in the background. Like he would say things like, thanks for getting that steel lick up. It was I've been through 3 steel players or whatever. Well, I mean, it's because I had done this. I had to listen to the individual parts, and you don't have to solo things and listen, but put things in context into their small group, and you will definitely be strengthening your mix. But that Michael Radford, I remember that one time, and that was one example, and where people said, oh, I forgot that was in the mix, or I forgot we did that, or thanks for bringing that out. Those are the things that you tend to hear when you mix this way, where you mute things and you shine the light or put the goggles on and you can see where things are laying in the mix, okay? Now, typically, you'd want to do this in the fat part of the song. So, but there's, okay, well, let me expand on that a little bit. You want to do this in the fat part of the song, which means where everything's playing, where the biggest thing, maybe the last chorus, or maybe it's the bridge where something new is introduced. You want to listen to that in context and be able to, just put it in loop and listen to things as you mute them and see if things still hold up, okay? But another example you might want to do is listen to it in a different part of the song. Like, for example, that's the fat part of the song, but let's just say in the very beginning of the song, you've just got piano, keys, and vocals. Well, there's not a whole lot of muting you can do to do that, because you can typically manage a couple of things at a time, but not a ton of things. So maybe you take a section of a song and you dissect that a little bit, and you make sure that things are holding up there too, as well as different sections of the song. Every time you do something like this, if you can build this into your workflow and not concentrate too much on holding you up from delivering a mix. These tips are designed to get you through a mix faster and get it to done faster. Okay. I was thinking about this morning as I was preparing to come and teach on this. It's almost like an eye test, because when you go to the doctor, he doesn't say, okay, tell me which one of these you can see the best, because he knows that you might choose the wrong thing, or you might choose the biggest thing, or you might choose the thing that's in bold, or you might choose the thing that you think he might want you to say. But what he does in a very consistent manner is he goes A or B, and then he'll go B or C, okay, B or D. And then he gets you to compare which one of the two is better. And that's a more accurate way of seeing exactly what your vision capabilities are. So mixes like this, when you mute things and you compare kick and snare and bass, okay, kick and snare and tom, they're very easy decisions on the surface, and it shouldn't take you very long to get through them. Yeah, so the soft parts of the song, you might want to check the piano vocal against the pad or other soft things like a shaker maybe. And it's not to say that everything needs to be equal volume. It just needs to know that it's represented in the mix. It's not being masked or muted by another loud instrument in the mix, okay? Another thing you want to check too, and I've talked about this, is the reverb versus the vocal. You don't want to cover the reverb. In most cases, you don't want to cover the vocal with too much reverb. And what I typically do is I'll, so in super mute, I'll solo and I'll listen and mute the verb. And when it is distractingly gone, that's a decision that you have to make, depending on what you're trying to do. So, okay, so I think what we'll try to do is go into a song that we have mixed before in the past. Now, this song is mixed, and chances are things are going to be in place, but I wanted to give you a few examples because, I can't reiterate this enough. This is there could be some things in here that I've missed also. So this is Holly Winter's song that we mixed called "Let's Get Lost." Let's go over to it and let's just start listening to it. So this should be intact. So let's listen to, let's say, the intro.
I remember summer, I remember falling hard for you.
One thing I notice in a lot of beginner mixers is that the lead vocal tends to be too loud. And I know I emphasize that in lyric-driven music, vocals should be prominent. But sometimes, as young mixers, there's a fine line between prominent and too loud. And this is a good way to check. Okay, so Holly's vocal is kind of loud in this, which it should be, but I'm going to mute, if you'll do this, mute the most dominant thing in the section. And when you mute that, you'll be able to see you're kind of unmasking what's behind it. And I know it sounds simple, but it's a step that often gets overlooked. Okay, so let's listen to Holly's vocal in the intro. She starts off cold. Let's see if I can find her vocal easily. Let me just go up here to the vocal bus, the leads here. Here's another good reason that I mix in subgroups. Mutable subgroups, mutable stems. Make it easy for yourself to be able to cross-check the stuff. Be like your guitars. Solo the guitars and keys. Mute the drums. If those are all in silos of sound, then you can easily mix or combine either two. And I may have done a good job or not so good job on this one because I think I may have missed the drum somehow. But okay, back to the task at hand. We're going to mute her vocal. Listen to the intro. First thing I notice is there's a keyboard swell going into it that I'd never noticed before because I think it comes in just before her vocal does. So I hear guitar, keys. Okay, so here's another section. Here's the second part or the second half of the verse. And I'm going to mute the keys real quick. So I'm going to highlight the keys and I'm going to mute them. Okay, so the thing I'm noticing that I didn't notice much was the bass. So I just want to make sure that when I take things back out, the bass is standing up. And I hear it. So. And the most apparent thing on there, the most driving thing in there is the acoustic. So let me take the acoustic out and see how everything else stands up. Okay, here's something I haven't noticed. There's something back there playing an arpeggiator, or arpeggio sort of thing, and I've never noticed it before. So it's not to say anything's going to change. I just want to make sure that I'm paying attention to it. That keyboard right there, honestly, I've never noticed what it's doing right there. Would the song be better if I boosted it up? I don't know. Let's see. He plays it through here, so let's bump it up with the clip gain. Now see, as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking he is playing an arpeggiated part too. Perhaps we do something outside of the acoustic guitar. Maybe we put it in the center. Or if the acoustic guitar is in stereo and it's left and right, maybe we should do something with that. Not going to do it now, but these are things you think about when you start to solo or mute or super solo as it goes. Okay, so I'm going to move on from this. Let's move to the chorus, first chorus, and let's see what we can find. So the most dominant thing here, besides the vocal, which is already muted, and is the drums. So I'm going to take the drums and let's mute the drums. I'm taking the electrics out for a second. Okay, nothing new there. Let's go to the second verse. Okay, so my suspicion here is, and these are things you listen to, the kick is much louder than the toms. So it's not anything I'm going to change while I'm soloed. And I think a lot of people give soloing a bad name, but it's the only way to uncover things like this. I'm not going to do anything while I'm soloed, but I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to put those glasses on for a second and take a look and see if it's anything I need to avoid. So toms versus kick. Okay, so I don't think I would want to do anything about that in context because it feels like the toms are fine. The kick is not too loud, but it is pretty loud soloed. So, okay, so let's just run up to the second chorus. These are just like real world, real time examples here.
On, cell phones off. Let's take a drive. Let's get lost between the trees.
Okay, so here's a good example of going to the soft part of the song. The bridge, it breaks down before it goes to the solo. So let's listen to this bridge and see if there's anything that we can mute. The most dominant thing probably would be the vocal.
Between the trees and open breeze.
So the thing I'm noticing is there's a pad in there that doesn't happen till the very end. I just want to make sure that if I were to mute the dominant things over that pad, okay, here's something I haven't noticed before. There's like a drone pad, like an airy pad, and there's a single reverby sort of thing. Would the song be better if I bump those up? Let's see. And just for the sake of, this is not the way you would want to do this necessarily, but I'm going to clip gain it so that we can hear it. Those are pretty low volume, so. All right, so let's put the vocals back in there and see if it's any better.
Between the trees and open breeze, I'm brought back to life. Now all I need is you next to me, and we'll go on
Okay, I think I unmuted some mixes in there.
to life, to life. Between the trees and open breeze, I'm brought back to life. Now all I need is you next to me, and we'll go on and on and on.
I think I may have messed up some levels and stuff right there, but I think it's better. I think the little the solo keyboard note and the pad probably need to be louder. So, and you never know until you solo things like this. One last thing, let's take the background vocals at the end where she sings. And I'm going to mute the band for this. So I'm going to go up here to the band master, mute it.
Let's take a drive. Let's take a drive. Oh, let's go. I keep waking up with this worry on my mind. Let the windows down. Come on, put your hand in mine.
Now, the thing I'm noticing here, which is something that could need to be addressed, is that there's a lot of delay in there that's taken away from the already distracting background vocals, because you've got, well, she's holding out a note and then she's singing a different melody underneath there. Well, do we want another melody going in behind that at a later time? I don't know. I mean, these are things that you uncover when you put on those goggles of being able to mute things. So, yeah. So hopefully this has been helpful, and let me know in the comments below, or let me know if I can clear anything up for you. Thanks for watching. See you soon. You would think as a recording
Now
engineer, I
there
would
is
learn
sound.
to
Yeah.
unmute myself. I was going to say Tassie is a big voice and a big member. He's been a member for 10 years on MixCoach member, and when Tassie speaks, we all listen. Tassie adds to the community and MixCoach member. So Tassie is here, and Tassie, I would love to hear any of your insights on being able to mute things and get a better picture of the mix as you mute. Do you have any thoughts on that? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah. After importing the tracks, I always mute some things. I always mute the room and the overheads, because a drum set, as a drummer, is a drum set with different parts of the drum, but an overhead is just a mic. So I want to get a great sound out of the drum set, and then only I see when unmuted the rooms or the overheads whether they do something good for the whole sound.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays I prefer mixing the trio first. So the drums, the bass, and the lead vocal or the lead guitar, and either soloing them or muting all the others. And because I found that if they are good sounding, then adding the rest of the instruments will keep the main points, the drums, bass, and the vocal standing in a good place.
So Tassie, tell me one more time, because I had trouble understanding. What do you say you start your mix with by listening to what, and then add?
I I mute the overheads and the room mics
Mm-hmm.
all the time, and just want to get a great sound out of the drum set itself.
Okay.
Later I may use them, but may not.
Okay.
Then I use the trio. Have you heard that? The drums, drum set, the bass, and the lead vocal.
Oh, okay.
It is because once, I don't know, 10 years ago, I was at a concert where there was the main band, the Comets,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, rocking around the clock and things like that.
Okay.
And
yeah.
before them, there was a trio, a rockabilly trio,
Trio. Uh-huh.
and the sound is so great with the snare and the bass that was unbelievable. And after that, this great world famous band didn't sound as good as a sound enjoyment. And since then, I always check just the trio, how it sounds.
That's
It belongs to muting, because I mute all the instruments or just solo the
Right.
trio part. And if they sound great in balance and sound, then I add the rest of the things. Yeah.
That's a great approach. And if you're mixing lyric driven music like country music or gospel music, where you really want to hear the lyrics and it's in the forefront, a really good mute tactic would be to mute the most important things in the track, which are going to be drums and vocals, like what you just said. So if you took both of those out, and I mentioned setting up your mix to where it's easy to mute those things individually.
Yeah.
If you muted the vocal and the drums, then everything else would be exposed, and you could see if there's any left to right action going, if everything is kind of stuck in the middle, because we tend to pan drums the way they should be, drummer's perspective or audience perspective. We've all had that conversation, and people tend to normally do drums, but or pan drums the right way, or the way they want to see it. But when you mute that and you take it out of the mix, then you start to see, is my mix holding together? Are these the two loudest things? Are there things being in the background that's getting lost in the talking of the song "Let's Get Lost." Let's don't get lost. And so to be able to see that, you mute the vocal and the drum. This is what I'm talking about with Tassie. Some words of wisdom here. Yeah, that's a great approach, Tassie, and I think I have done that a few times, but I think I'm going to. Well, I mean, I mix the way I mix, but this is the way I typically do things. I'll mute things in the mix to see what stands out. But that's really good insight, Tassie.
And I think that muting or soloing something, they are different. They are just the same things, because I may say that I solo the vocal and the guitar, then I muted all the others. And I do always things like that to find the licks and the decorating parts of the instruments.
Mm-hmm.
To listen together in pairs. The lead vocal with the key, the lead vocal with the guitar, the lead vocal with the acoustic. Where is there something which, as you say, in the whole mix I can't hear, but when I separate them, it pops out, and I can clip gain them to make it appear for the moms.
Exactly.
in the mix.
Exactly. Well, so Tassie, thank you for coming in and sitting in with me. This was originally designed to be a training on MixCoach Member, but I think I was a little late in getting it announced, because it's something I've been thinking about. It's like, I want to jump on there and let's talk about this and break this one thing down. I've got a resource coming out to everybody watching. I've got a resource coming out in the next week or so, and it's the 7 it's still yet to be named, but there's 7 tips, this being the first one. Now, we're not going to go live for every one of them, but they will be on MixCoach Member, and we will be talking about this stuff. But so just to let you know, I don't have a clickable link, but this whole thing felt kind of like I was doing it last minute, which is probably why not a lot of people know about this yet. But as you're seeing this later, be sure and comment in the sections, ask questions. Tassie, I want to say thank you for coming. I will end the broadcast.
Thanks for having this. It's always great to have a chat with you.
Oh, my pleasure. Always nice to talk to you. Tassie, if you'll hang out, I'm going to end the broadcast and you and I can chat, okay? So stand by. All right. All right, guys. Thanks for coming, hanging out. Thanks for some of the friends that Mark Tullius. I just realized, Mark, I'm saying your name wrong. It's Tullius. Anyway, Mark, great to see you. Dean and Carl, thanks for checking in. If you guys have any questions, post them in the comment. And otherwise, I will see you again very soon. Thanks for coming. All right. Bye.